we're completely institutionalized in thinking that happiness or pleasure is the goal, and that is the striving. But I'm saying no, peace is better. We have no idea what good or bad we do because we're impacting all the time. Everything's an energy ripple.
I look back on versions of me and I don't think he was enough.
You recognise, wow, compassion, it makes sense. It's not even just a nice little fluffy thing, but it's a very logical, pragmatic thing for the human race.
60 seconds to deliver a message to someone who is feeling unfulfilled in their life. What would you say? Dr. Joey Webber, third time on the podcast, my first ever guest. We're going to talk about a load of stuff, public persona, drive, but I thought we would start with what is equanimity and why should people listen?
The simplest way to describe equanimity is to realize that we are categorizing experience on a moment-to-moment basis. The three categories on everything, like, dislike, or neutral. These categories are based on self-construct, right? That's a whole nother... Your self-construct is, a creation of a whole host of things that we'll go into in a minute. But essentially, equanimity is recognizing that these three categories are giving rise to a judgment or feeling tone in relation to experience, which acts as like a trampoline into thought, stream, emotion, memory or future fantasy, whatever it is. But it's that you're stripping it back to realize that there's a layer of projection that your mind's doing, and that is based upon your self-construct. So what is self-construct then? Then you go, right, okay, you were born, you've got parents or carers, there's school that's influenced you, there's media, there's the politics, there's the country you grow up in, your geography, environment. So all of that social conditioning shapes who you think you are because you get told social norms via that, what's appropriate, what's not, etc. So you're acting in relation to these, things. But equally, because you have an internal subjective view of the world too, and something you don't always express to the external world, you then want to be liked and want to be seen as doing good. So you create a version of yourself inside that is appropriate for the external world to see. So the self becomes this kind of play or cosmic kind of, happening between what you're projecting outwards and what's projecting inwards from the outside. Somewhere in the middle is this kind of amalgamation of this is me. I like this, I like that. So it's a real kind of complex web is the self, and it constantly changes as well. As you develop and get wisdom, get older, have partners, change your allegiances politically or whatever, like your version of yourself changes nonstop as well. So when you look at the self like that, rather than it being some kind of fixed, static, I am this, you realize that it's quite temporary, illusory, and just as easily it can be created, it can be discreated or disbanded. So the self becomes this... just this kind of construct that is relating to experience on a categorization basis. So it's like the self now is relating to what he likes, dislikes, finds neutral, which is creating a reaction in the world, behavior reaction. And the idea is that you recognize that that's going on so you can have this ethical, like compassionate, playful, curious nature of being in the world, like a joyful way of being. That for me is all of that together is equanimity in a nutshell. You could call it balance. You could just say, right, Joey, that's a lot of bloody language there. Let's just call it balance. But balance of what? It's balance of recognition of self, recognition of awareness, recognition of behavior. You're kind of coming back in the middle and relating to the world, of avoiding extremes, of like, being in the middle of it all.
Yeah. And why should people care?
Why should they care is that we've probably played out most of our lives not in this space. Not in that space in the middle is basically not in peace. And so it's a different way of looking at the world. I think we are completely institutionalized in thinking that happiness or pleasure is the goal, and that is what we should get, and that is the strife. There's the striving. But I'm saying no, peace is better. Because happiness, pleasure is fleeting, just as fleeting as the opposite end of the spectrum of, the pain and everything. It all comes, it all goes, it all comes, it all goes. If you're striving for one, the mere act of striving becomes displeasurable. And when you taste the pleasure, that evaporates almost straight away, and you want the next high, the next pleasure, the next this. It becomes like a form of addiction type of thing, an addiction to sensory experience in the pleasure zone of like. And when you don't get that, you're upset. When you get that, you're upset because it goes quickly, and then you get nostalgic because you want it back. So it's like that pleasure happiness model doesn't bring people peace, in my opinion. It just feeds this kind of never fulfilled, kind of constantly grasping at mind that's like something better is around the corner. This moment isn't enough. The next one's going to be better. The next one. When I go on holiday, it's going to be better. When I get the girlfriend, it's going to be better. When I get the kid or whatever, the job, then there'll be some kind of sustained happiness. It's false. It's a myth. That just creates more and more of that. You can never fill that beast. So the peace option is this idea of regardless of what experience occurs, you find peace with it. So yeah, you can feel this. We can all enjoy the pleasure, of course. Like we love the likes, we like what we like, and that's wonderful to have. But we don't grasp onto it as much. We let it be, and we're equanimous with that pleasure and peace and niceness. So we're not overly grasping and destroying it. And equally, when you go to the other side, the pain, the aversion, the kind of stuff that you don't want. That doesn't become this, oh my God, my life's over, ruined. It's just a temporary experience that's transient, fleeting, and it too will go. But we don't become so averse to that we're scared of that, because then we live on fear of negative experience. If we're living in fear of negative experience all the time, then we become anxious, and we could maybe suppress or avoid or withdraw from those types of feelings, sensations, etc., people, etc., and we become quite closed and rigid and scared. That's, for me, not a good option either, because you're either, living in the two extremes of the world, and none of them are giving you peace. And I think more than anything right now, we need peace. And that means this like inner stoic sense of grounded peacefulness with whatever it goes on. I'm here, I'm present, I'm dealing with it. For me, it's resilience. For me, it's emotional regulation. It's a heightened sense of awareness. It's also ethical in nature, because it's got this compassion piece, because you recognize, well, fuck, if that's happening to me, it's happening to every bloody person on the planet. No wonder everyone is so confused and aggressive and angry, and because no one's getting what they want, really. No one's totally happy, and they're all trying to fight for it in their own different ways. But it's leading to carnage, because their dislikes interacting with my like and my dislike, and the dislikes and likes, and they're just navigating the world through these harsh lenses that are not fulfilling them or anyone else, and we clash with each other. So you recognize, wow, compassion, it makes sense. It's not even just a nice little fluffy thing. You go, oh, compassion. It's like, no, this is a very logical, pragmatic thing for the human race. Is that and because then you can look at it the other way and think, well, if others are peaceful, I will be peaceful too. And if I am peaceful, others will be peaceful. We kind of exist in relation to others. Like, this otherness is kind of us. Who cares if we're just perfectly peaceful, but all our mates around us are suffering? Like that, for me, that's no fun either. All our family's suffering. Like, you will suffer in relation to that, no matter how peaceful you feel. So you're kind of depending on the rest of the world to reach this state just as much as you are. So it's not a selfish thing. It's a complete community-focused social thing as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think being in like that, those extreme modes of pleasure and pain, it's almost like zero sum relationality because everyone's chasing each other in round like a dog chasing its tail.
Yeah, I think so.
Where
Yeah,
whereas like what I interpret the way he's saying is like uh well, I just said zero sum, so peace would be like a positive sum for everyone because it doesn't detract from anyone, it just gives.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And also appreciating individual difference comes from peace. Whereas if it's
Mm.
tied up in the pleasure and the displeasure, it's like, no, we can only be friends if you think the exact same as me, you know. But actually, we're all completely, obviously, totally hyper different. So you respect individual differences, and you're okay, and your tolerance increases, etc. So from the place of peace, harmony arises. But from pain and pleasure, there's a massive less likelihood of any harmony because unless people are exactly the same as you and totally nice to you all the time and say the right things and never, you never have a problem with them and all this type of stuff, which is kind of non-existent. That doesn't really happen either. Because as soon as that happens, you get mundane and bored with them. So it's like, because neutrality is the third thing that we're introducing. You got the pain and the pleasure, but the neutrality is another huge thing I think that's problematic in this society at the moment. And that's because we're so used to instant gratification via mobiles and dopamine hits, etc. You know, we're constantly getting that thingy. What's actually happening is we're becoming more faced with neutrality or mundanity. And because we're not used to being with ourselves, we label this as boredom and as not fruitful because it's not bringing us pleasure. So actually, this becomes a bit of a dislike. So, in theory, where there's three categories, we're becoming very polarized, where there's a small pot of pleasure and a huge layer of dislike and disharmony. And that's because no one can be with themselves in the neutral space or the mundane. They're like, this is boring. What do I do now? I'm not doing anything. I'm not achieving anything. I'm not happy. I'm not,
Mm.
no one can be in that kind of neutral space. And that's really sad to see, I think, because it's like, if you really map out life logically and just look at what happens, most of life's neutral. It's the most place we're in. It's like, we do a few things in the week we love. We do a majority we don't love, like work or, washing the dishes. And then the neutral spaces were like everything in between. So we naturally gravitate to the phone or to the substance, alcohol, drugs, whatever, sex, in order to fill that neutral space. So we end up like reverting back to the hamster wheel and being more polarized.
Yeah. It's I think people mistake pleasure for happiness, and even someone might even hear that, including myself, and think, yeah, I don't think that. Pleasure is just all about, masturbation or whatever, the extreme end. But like, pleasure can just be, uh, the kind of rush you feel after achieving a thing or meeting someone or having I don't know, like, but
Yeah, continuum of pleasure will go like subtle sensory sensations that feel nice. Even the wind blowing
mm,
on your skin in the park, and you get your hair stand up. That's pleasurable versus the extreme. um, you know,
hmm
there's a whole host of things in the middle. If it's bodily pleasure, or if it's mental pleasure, thinking about a nice thing, or if it's a smell. All the senses are key here to think about. That the different senses we have, auditory, visual, smell, taste, touch, these all give rise to some form of pleasure or displeasure. So it's all of this is directly connected to the body and the sense experience. So I can see things that give rise to, oh, that's nice, or she looks hot, or whatever it is. Yeah, or I listen to music that I like or I dislike, or I smell a nice fragrance or I don't like. I taste a nice food or I don't like. Like, our field of awareness is based around the senses, so we have to understand that that will take form in different capacity.
You were talking earlier about like the sort of morning ritual hoops that I jump through to try and get myself to feel like me, primed for a conversation. And a big part of that, I'm just realizing like how stupid it is. A big part of that is like caffeine and meditation. And I'm sat there and I'm like relaxing everything and I'm being present with the breath and all the rest of it. Meanwhile, I've got like 70 milligrams of caffeine surging around my system, which is allowing it to feel more pleasurable. If you'd asked me to meditate straight away first thing in the morning, as soon as I woke up feeling groggy, hadn't been for my walk, hadn't had any caffeine, it's a very different experience. And I guess we've got to be careful not to be too hard on ourselves, right? Because most people, probably 99% of people, aren't even doing any meditation in the morning. But what do you think about that side of thing, like the pleasure of mindfulness?
All of what we're talking about is not like it. You got to realize that none of it is either good or bad. Ultimately, it's all just an experience. So to experience pleasure is obviously nicer than not. So where you can enjoy, and it's not like, oh, that's pleasurable. It's like, oh, that is absolutely incredible. And the self compassion comes in because you're like allowing yourself to do things that nurture and fulfill you, right? And that get you in the desired space that you want to be in. That's a kindness to yourself. And you're recognizing that from that place, you can then perform better. So all of that is like inner wisdom about Jason knows himself and he needs X, Y, and Z to function. So that's all wonderful. What we're saying is the link to pleasure and happiness is that if we become addicted or we base that pleasure as the source of happiness, and we become like needing more and more of it, so then it becomes like an addictive thing. And that's the tricky bit, because it's like, when you have a really nice meditation, in the meditation, but the biggest blocker to that is wanting that to last.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're having a lovely time and you're like, oh my God, I need to record this, or I want it. And then you've lost it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with food. It's like, oh, this is absolutely amazing. I want more of it. Do you know what I mean? It's just that sense of wanting more from the pleasure. Because it's pleasurable, the natural, logical thing for the mind is to be like, I want more. But that is where the wisdom comes in and say, you need to let that be and let that go and come back and do the other things. And then it's finding pleasure in the neutral, finding pleasure in the displeasure. The whole experience can become the same. And that's what we're doing with equanimity, equalizing it all. So the polarization and the extremes are not so obvious to us, and we can be in whatever situation in peace. So you can be in peace in pleasure, in peace in neutral, in peace in displeasure, much more easily and fluid. And you're just able to like go through life at ease, and there's no right or wrong. Like, the concept of like, dislike, neutrality lends itself to good, bad, right, wrong. And then you start getting down a scary place, because then you're forever analysing what's right and wrong, when there's none of that. It really exists. It's just a temporary, fleeting experience. for you as a person subjectively. Like if you obviously you might think, oh, there's right and wrong ultimately from an ethical perspective or from some religious thing. That's cool, but like in the small micro ways that we're being, we think we need to release that sense of like a good and bad and neutral and just embrace everything as peaceful and as joyful, as curious you allow it. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Because when you talked to me, it was almost like you were judging yourself for like what meditating with coffee, and it's like, well, that's cool. Don't self judge and go down the, self bashing state of, oh, I'm doing this wrong or right, because you're putting labels and judgments onto experience, and equanimity is not about that. It's about taking them off.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose. Like, would that conversation be differently? It would be different if I said, "Well, I like to do my morning meditation with a glass of whiskey."
It's probably fine.
I mean, I haven't drunk for a very long time. I always found, I don't know, I'm sure you found this, as soon as you have an ounce of alcohol, it's
Yeah.
impossible to meditate.
I've not really tried. Well, I don't know, because I mean,
Never tried. Too
sometimes
busy dancing on tables.
alcohol's a thought suppressant, right?
Yeah.
So it's a similar. Sometimes when you meditate and you're kind of letting go of thoughts or becoming aware of them, and the noise quiets, you're almost in a similar place. I think that's why you're not in a similar place, because it's an intoxicant and it's a false way of getting you there.
Mm.
But why do people take drugs and drink and stuff? And it's because they're escaping the mind. They're escaping the thoughts and the way of being. So the effect of it is obviously what is nice, is pleasurable.
Yeah. I had this is an interesting one for you to think about. I had a guy on the podcast, Christopher Wallace, uh, American guy, and he's like big in like the masculinity sphere. Very interesting guy. He's like also like a therapist, alcohol addiction therapist.
Hmm.
And he said that he believed that alcohol addiction is an addiction to fear state. So when you have a drink, it's putting you in this kind of like your vision kind of like everything like focuses in a little bit. You might get, and you're putting yourself in this like deliberate fear state, which is where like people can get leery and stuff, and it's in like this slight anxious state. And the more you drink, and it's like, but that's like it's quite rushy, isn't it? Being in a fear state, like that push and pull between the two things. It's a little bit like I think you see this most with like nicotine cigarettes. You kind of put yourself in a fear state, don't you? Kind of feels horrible, but it's the bit in between, the coming up to the fear state or the
Mm.
coming back down into your like regular state, but the bit in between that feels quite nice.
Yeah.
Um, Saunas, are the same, like into the sauna, and there's a bit in the middle where you start to rise in temperature. It's really nice. Doesn't last long.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's a good thing that you're talking about here, because you're like recognizing the temp
Impermanence.
the impermanence and the temporary nature of experience, and in this case, pleasure brought on by intoxicants, is so subtle and fleeting. But isn't it interesting that we're so desperately repeating that process just to feel that, regardless of the aftermath and the beer fear and all the dread and all this stuff, just for that small little window, we want it again. So there's
Mm,
something in that, and that is telling us from a wisdom perspective that uh, we can get there, but we don't have to have the intoxicants. And if we allow ourselves to just recognize and be aware of this little moment, you can almost turn every moment into that. You get me? It's like, rather than just waiting for something to bring it on, every single moment, if embraced with equanimity, could be like that little rise, that
mm,
little because your whole mindset and approach to the moment's different. There's no grasping, clinging, there's wisdom, there's compassion, there's curiousness, and there's just a kind of allowing nature of reality, just to allow it all to be, resting with it, resting your body, being aware of your mind, being aware of how the moment changes. Like that's all wonderful and nice, a nice place to be. And I think that's exactly the point that can be experienced.
Intuition.
Love that.
How can we trust ourselves more deeply? How can we tell when it's actual intuition or not just a predefined bias,
Yeah.
preconceived bias?
Yeah. So with this whole equanimity stuff that I talk about a lot, there's the idea that based upon the self-construct and all the likes and dislikes, we make a lot of judgments towards things. Like we're judging continually without realizing it unconsciously. We're judging non-stop. Here's the thing. Discernment is still really necessary. So it's almost like you could go down the path of, oh, like, dislike, neutrality. Oh, I'll just drop it all. But you still need to be discerning. And that means that you have a kind of innate or intuitive relationship with what's right and wrong, or good and bad, because that's the ethical component that comes in. And also it's practical as well. Like if I had my hand on a stove and it was bloody boiling, and like, oh, be equanimous to this pain. It's a load of bollocks, isn't it? It's like, get your hand off. Like your discerning mind needs to be like that for safety reasons as well, and survival. So discernment is key. What we're recognizing is that slightly differs from judgment. The judging mind, which I would say is like 98% running the show, versus the discerning underneath that, the wisdom element that we tap into when we allow the judgments to pass. It may well be that we allow the judgments to pass, but actually we arrive at the same conclusion. But it's come from a different space. It hasn't come from like a thoughts, analytical past experience kind of space. It's come from an innate wisdom space of this is the right thing to do. Because you need it in decision making, don't you? You can't just be like, oh, there's no good, there's no bad, there's no right, there's no left. Like there is conventionally in reality that we be with. We have to make these things have to mean something to us. So you're almost like being aware that it might be conditioned, allowing that to kind of rest, and then arriving from, I think from, sounds cheesy, but from the heart space or some other space that comes up and takes control, and it's like, this is the path. That's the right answer. This is a good thing to do. And often that is driven by compassion and love, or not fear driven, not externally driven, but internally driven. And I think that's the difference between discernment and judgment. And that is the space of intuition. Because I think wisdom is your intuitive body that's picked up on all the life lessons from birth. And it's got real meaning for you as a human on this planet. I mean, you could, in theory, have wrong intuition or bad intuition, because you could be blending the two, judgment and the thinking, because of your experience, you've reached the wrong conclusions. So it gets complicated. But I don't know. I feel like there's a genuine different energy with intuition than there is from just a snapshot judgment.
So just to confirm, so we're saying that
maybe one's
judgment,
fabricated in the brain and one's fabricated in the heart. I
so
don't know.
discernment is more heart-led, judgment is more brain-led. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, let's simplify it like that. Yeah, that could be a hypothesis.
So a working model for
working
the
model.
length of this podcast.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I'm thinking of like I'm trying to think of an example. So where discernment is difficult because there are these like emotional responses that probably relate to trauma. So like, let's say someone is, we talk about attachment a lot. Well, I do. Let's say someone is entering a relationship with someone,
Mm.
and this person like makes them feel good. They're kind of, they've got a real good intuition around this person. Um, and also you've got all the brain signals are going there, like all the boxes ticked, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say something happens which throws that intuition off, and the brain is saying, well, actually, uh, your intuition about this person is still right,
Mm.
but there's something now because of what has happened that's triggered this emotional response that is mixing with this discernment judgment thing.
Yeah.
And now the two have kind of fused
Mm-hmm.
together
Yeah.
in the gut,
Yeah. 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 Vegas nerve.
and then yeah, like what are some practices do we think on trying to separate those two things? It's almost like oil and water have mixed together,
Yeah.
and then
Lovely.
like we're trying
Yeah.
to like pull it
Really,
apart.
really nice. Really nice expression there. Yeah, I like that. Totally agree that's the key to life. If you can do
Hmm.
that, I think that's the disentanglement. What
Yeah.
what you're describing, I think, is like a tangled web inside, or oil and water. It's this mesh, and you've got your kind of unconscious and your conscious experience, if you want to use those expressions, or you've got
Hmm.
your, what's known and not known. And yeah, you've been hurt in the past, you've been stung in the past, so this all is part of that. You've been to therapy or whatever, and you go, oh no, this is the antidote, and you've got that there, and you're like, whoa, there's still a mess inside you, isn't it? So yeah, what do you do with that mess? And I think this is the call to action for different modalities to take center stage. And what I mean by that is you will need to do a combination of things, because I think the idea is, oh, we can do a little hack, do a certain meditation, and there's a separation, and then it's, oh my god, it's done.
Hmm.
20 minutes, and I've just unraveled the disentanglement in myself, and I am now this experience. But I think that's a false way of viewing reality. Like, we have to be aware of that we've got a mind, brain, and body, and these need to be in harmony. And so some practices in the body will contribute to the mind, and some in the mind will contribute to the body, and so they work together. But I would say that a person struggling with those experiences, or the stickiness or the soup of that, would need to somehow embark on a bit of a journey around healing. Let's call it a healing journey. I mean, it's so cliche, and we need to call it something cooler than that, because people just hear that and be like, oh, fucking hell, yeah, healing journey, we get it. Go
Do
to
you think
Bali
is it
and
almost like trying
still.
to operate without that fear? So like non-fear state kind of intuition somehow.
Yeah, it's like we need the courage, and you need the equanimity would help facilitate all that. But you're also going to have to do your legwork. You're going to have to do your exercise, and you're going to get on top of your diet and your sleeping. So you got your body running in harmony. You may need acupuncture, Reiki. You may need other therapy, body stuff, somatic movements and stuff. And that's your body doing well. But you're also going to need your mind and attitude stuff. So you might need the therapy and meditation, the emotional regulation techniques, might be expressing anger, expressing yourself, putting boundaries in place. So you've got a combination of the two that over time, when you revisit this sticky space, it'll be clearer. It will be clearer.
And you said before about like entanglement, and then you mentioned there like massage or something,
Mm,
and that's literally like the cells within the muscles and the fibers being relaxed so that they do disentangle, and it's kind of the same. And all these
same.
different modalities, whether it's meditation and nature and therapy, the
Yeah,
more of that we do, the more we'll be able to disentangle it and come home to the actual true answer.
perfect. Yeah, yeah. So I think it's a stage of like, and it might be acceptance of like, oh fuck, I'm in no fit state to know what's happening here, but I know what I've got to do. And in 6 months, maybe it'll be a bit clearer. And in 6 months after that, maybe it'll be a bit clearer. And the
Mm.
idea is, I guess, what is the end goal? Do you perceive that we can be in this perfect like harmony state, or are we just supposed to accept the fact that being human is the murkiness of the oil and the water? Like that is humanness. So
Mm.
instead of like trying to fix or solve, accept. And that is in itself a form of fixing and solving. True acceptance, the true meaning of the depth of that, accepting you as you are,
Mm.
fully loving yourself, fully loving your inner child, fully loving your cock ups and whatever is beautiful. And it's that acceptance to the messiness is beautiful. But equally, I do think, there's different stages that we evolve through or go through, and that you need to also, because that could be a lazy man's game. I think that was maybe my game in the early days. I just accept it all, don't we? But actually, no, you've got to do the work too. I want to be 60 or 70 and have no emotional hang-ups and have good quality relationships and feel peaceful. Like peace for me is the end goal. And, because then at the point of death, it's easier to go rather than being full of fear and regret and remorse. And so if we can have this kind of sense of peacefulness with others and relationships and ourselves, we might only get to that peacefulness because of all the different modalities that we've done that have helped disentangle some of the shit that's kept us small. And it's about breaking free of that and embracing the wholeness of us, and all
Mm.
versions of us are okay. So yeah, I'm one of them where it's a bit like, depending on what time of day you ask, it's like you just accept it all, but also do the work as well. Maybe a better way of saying it is accept each stage that you're at, but be moving forward in terms of spiritual involvement, whatever that is linked to. It can be whatever
Yeah,
religion, but like,
I just think
go
that
on.
like I love training analogies as well.
Yeah.
Like they map on to life really well.
Hmm.
I think I talked about this in a podcast a few weeks ago. I did like a solo episode and I was talking about this stuff and uh, dopamine Jason, serotonin version, at rest Jason, getting version Jason.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then, if you looked at it like a training calendar, it's like, well, you can't be going hard all the time. And I suppose the peace is almost like the rest in between, but you can't you can't just constantly be at peace unless you divorce yourself from life and become a forest monk. Then you might actually need like the hard training, and the hard training could be just going to work and having a difficult day, um, and then it's being able to then recover from that and uh, reflect on that and integrate your learnings, come at peace, and then go again.
That's the word there, integrate.
Mm.
All the different Jasons that you presented, like the integration of those to be one whole. So you're at peace with every version of that Jason, and you're happy, and you're finding happiness and a kind of deep satisfaction with the fact that you're changing and you're okay with yourself at each of those stages. And there's no one right or wrong. So, because then you're like, oh, I'm only happy when I'm doing my exercise. The restoration's boring. The work's displeasurable, and that still overall is meaning in a week you're like 10% peaceful, because that's when you're doing your exercise. But that's still not great. That's mean 90% is miserable. So that's not, for me, that's not enough. Like we should be striving for the opposite. So like you say, integrate all of the characters, all of the different needs, find peace in all of those, and be playful with it all as well, because at the changing nature of things.
I'm so excited to tell you about my first ever sponsor. Bear Bar make the highest quality shower soaps. Those of you close to me will know I'm always recommending and gifting them to people. I've actually brought some upstairs from my bathroom to show you. This one is Nebula Nightshade Fresh Cut Pine. This is one of the first ones that they made. It's got like this oaty kind of texture thing. I once described it to Christian, the founder, as like a cheese grater for my feet in a good way. Favorites are Woodsman, Molten Lather, is actually a shampoo bar, and Citrus Burst, which I've used all of that, so I don't have it. Do you remember those like packs you used to get with Pokemon cards? They're kind of like that. They stack it in your bathroom really nicely. You'll definitely dig it. Once you try these, you will never want to go back to £1.99 squeezy plastic horrible fairy liquid style soaps. Trust me, it is an absolute game changer. I don't even bother with moisturizer because I've got this fantastic quality soap and a good diet, of course. There's no plastic. It's made in the UK. Honestly, it's just a 5-star product all around. If you'd like to try Bear Bar, you can get 15% off your first order by going to bit.ly/bearjace. That's BAREJASE to get 15% off. How can equanimity coexist with competitive drive, or even help performance?
So I think it's just about being comfortable with your perception of competitive drive, and that competition's helpful for you because it's maintaining your body, which is giving you a sense of peace and ease. And from that place, you're more able to facilitate the other aspects of your life with greater peace and ease. So what I found is that you need the kind of competitive drive to get up in the morning. It relates to eustress, the positive stress. We always talk about stress and a negative, but you need the eustress, the positive stress, to like get out of bed and I want to publish this. I want to go win #1 in the High Rocks. These are all like wonderful like aspirations to have because they're getting us moving and we're physically active. That's giving us peace, which then feeds into when I'm changing my kid's diaper. Oh, it sounds so American. Changing my kid's diaper. Also, peaceful with that and not resentful and remorseful because I've had the experience of the other bit. You got to like allow yourself happiness and pleasure and give time for yourself. If that's in a competitive nature, so what? Wonderful. I think, competition brings out a lot of great stuff in people. You recognize if that's become too much, if that's become like, oh my God, if I'm second, I will hate myself, and it just becomes another self-bashing exercise that, maybe it's a form of self-harm because you can never get where you want to get. So you're just punishing yourself. You've got to recognize the little subtle ways that we punish ourselves and keep ourselves small. That's not good. But if you can embrace competitiveness, in the spirit of what it is, like playfulness, and be all right with that when it goes as well, when you are first or second or third, and then that's wonderful. And in that way, it can bring everyone else up because you are acting as like a role model or as an inspiration, aren't you? Because you're like, wow, he's really trying hard, and getting a lot of benefits from trying hard. And often life is the process, isn't it, rather than the end goal. So the process of being competitive is all the other stuff, the sleep, the right food, the right energy, So all of that is contributing to an overall bodily sense of equanimity if it's met right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think two things I was thinking when you're saying that. One was, I wonder like how many like enlightened world class footballers or athletes
There
there
are.
are. I mean, you look at some extreme examples, like someone like Tiger Woods. I think had like pretty messed up childhood and was basically forced to watch his dad hit golf balls from when he was in a high chair, and so I guess being at the top in sports doesn't necessarily mean your mind's going to be the best.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and then additionally, I was thinking something that I said yesterday on another podcast was, is it possible to respect the version of me that doesn't do the hard things or that doesn't do the I'm using myself as an avatar here, but yeah, is it possible for me to not to respect the version of Jason that doesn't do podcasting, high rocks, or marketing? Is it possible for Joey to respect the non author? Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
um I know I said two things, but there's a third thing. It's not really a question; it's just a thought. And something I've been playing with recently was like, obviously we hear a lot in the self-help spaces, like you are enough,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I've been thinking, what if you weren't enough?
But you've been told you are enough.
Do you know what I mean like at what point, like someone who don't know, because I look back on versions of me and I'm like, I don't think he was enough, so I made him enough.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's don't know. It's that might be seen as toxic. Do you know what I mean? I'm not really sure what I've asked you there, but
I'll try and remember. So first thing about sports, yeah, top athletes not necessarily like when you say enlightened. I mean, it can mean different things to people, but in like a sense of
equanimous,
peacefulness, yeah, or
yeah,
equanimous, yeah, for sure. Because there's a lot of sports people that become addicted to substances or whatever or go off the
yeah,
rails, aren't there? There's loads, and we don't see the majority that would not make it and what that does to their lives and all the kind of stories afterwards of looking back and thinking, oh my God. But equally, like you can see the top athletes have this certain relationship with themselves, and it's always about improving, which is not a bad thing because
yeah,
having a skill is really vital for the mind to focus on and improving your skill. Part of the disentanglement, I think, is also finding out what you enjoy and putting love there because you're putting love on an aspect of yourself and honing that skill. So a lot of the top athletes are obsessed with improvement, and that's a good thing. Obviously, it's a wonderful thing in that context. But majority of sports people won't make it, and there's some horror stories, as there is with everything. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily equate a satisfied mind either. It's like, you can win the cup, but then all you're bothered about is the next cup. And you don't know what their mind's like in between games or in the game, or how much they beat themselves up about performing a wrong move, dealing with all the social media that's, negative around their every move. It must be difficult. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't think, oh, an athlete means they're happy. It just means that they might be quite obsessional about honing this skill. And in this moment in their lives, it is enough for them right now. Might not be the same like that when they retire. So yeah, it's their ability to change and adapt, I guess, to circumstances. But yeah, I think skill is vitally important. in this disentanglement process. And I think everyone has to find the passion, what they love, and nurture it. And they always say about, your inner child like these things, and as an adult you kind of forget them, but you need to pick them back up and all this type of stuff. But it's really vital, and I think it helps you do the other stuff, like the mundane and the displeasurable stuff, with greater ease, because you're having that part of yourself full. Like, that's that self-compassion thing as well, isn't it? It's like, you can't pour from an empty cup. That expression, it's like you need to be full and in abundance in order for the other stuff to flow into other areas of your life. So if you sit there and think, oh, I'm not enough, and I'm not doing this, and I've not done that, and I don't respect when I'm not doing that, then you're not being self-compassionate, and you're creating a dichotomy of self where you're only valued in one certain circumstance, or lovable in one area. I'm Jason, I'm lovable when I'm doing the high rocks, but when I'm sat on my ass watching South Park, I'm not lovable. Like, that isn't helpful, because, the South Park guy is just as valuable as the high rocks guy, because that South Park guy has created the high rocks guy. You need everything in balance and in proportion. So it's like, if you were to deny one aspect of yourself, you wouldn't necessarily flourish in the bits that you are. So in that way, the balance is important. You could get to a stage in which you're sick of your actions and you want to make a change. And in that stage, you say, oh, I wasn't enough then, but you're trying to create something different. But you're always enough in that you've always got this beautiful, like, awareness of self. And, you can look into the sky and see a cloud, and it is a unique cloud. It will never, ever be seen ever again, that exact same cloud, as it is with your eyes right now. Like, every moment's a bloody miracle, to be honest. So you're always enough, like, as a being. And you can always improve as a being too. So it's about not being complacent with what you've got, because then you lack gratitude, you lack, all this other stuff, and you just become a bit depressed. And you're kind of wasting it. You're wasting your gift. And I would say that every human's a gift. Sound like quite evangelical now, don't know, miracles and gifts and stuff, but it is really like that. Like, the cloud that I'm seeing there, well, no one can ever see that in the exact same form now. That is a bloody miracle. It's amazing. Like, every moment is incredible, to be honest. It's baffling how amazing it all is. So you can look at yourself like that as well. You can look at your bad points or your things that you want to improve and be like, oh, that's not enough, and it's unworthy. But you can equally look at yourself and saying, is this a period of restoration, of calm, of reflection, of getting what I need, finding or recovering from past trauma, or dealing with, things that happened to me in childhood. Like, it might not look pretty, but it might be necessary. And everything is necessary in terms of evolution of self. So I love that guy's book. We grow through what we go through. Or is it? We grow. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? We're growing through what we go. So whatever you experience is an opportunity for growth. And we are kind of growing by default. Like, even if you ignore that, like, things change, so you kind of have to adapt. Or you.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I suppose it's like, even if you are in that moment where you maybe don't feel like you're enough or whatever, the smallest contribution can make a vast amount of difference.
exactly. Yeah.
If you're a basement dwelling, never go out your room, constantly playing on Xbox or whatever, not offering any value to the world, but then maybe you go out for a walk one morning and you say hello to your neighbor, that could be progress.
100%. Yeah, small, tiny things, but equally.
And not that I'm saying that there's anything wrong with the basement dwelling Xbox kid. Maybe he's got an online community and they like watching him play games, and he's giving something to the world in that. So
100%.
It's not to give any judgment, but for me, that wouldn't be enough.
Yeah.
So it's like your own. For me, you've
got your own. We've set our own barometers about what is valuable and what's worthy and things like that. So we have to
And
like,
you're talking about like, the miracle of being alive, and it's like it does seem a waste, doesn't it, to live it shut off from the world.
yeah, well, in some ways, I mean, you could say what's different from that to a monk. I mean, I know they're not training the mind in a cave necessarily, but just being. I think there's so much like judgment. Like we're assuming that life's about helping others and offering something. And I actually I do prescribe to that. But if you've not necessarily been taught that or grown up with that, and you're like the world around you is a scary place, and you're hearing X, Y, and Z shit is happening non-stop, who wouldn't want to stay in their room as a young person
Yeah.
when all the fucking social media is berating them? And as soon as they step out of the parapet, they get chopped down. It's like I'd be the fucking same. So it's a symptom of society. It's not like their kind of like fault. It's like we should have compassion for their kind of worldview,
Yes.
because they might not value themselves as much yet. But it's still a bit of a, who's to say that what they're doing isn't really fun, and
Yeah.
they're really enjoying their lives, and they're
Yeah.
engaged in
And
an
and
activity that's not
yeah, I
harming
suppose
anyone at
it's,
least.
yeah, and the way that like, and also the way that like societies operate is on this like status hierarchy and stuff, and
Yeah,
people
exactly.
are on a different level, and that's how it all works. Because if everyone was out there trying to be whatever authors or
Yeah,
high rocks podcasters, then there won't be any room anywhere else. So everyone is valuable in that sense, aren't they?
yeah, exactly. It's like the entirety of the world is doing their bit, and that is
Hmm.
impacting us, and we're impacting that, and it's like the whole of the world is just pulsing, like a giant bloody heartbeat, and
Yeah.
it's all relevant and necessary. Although, then you start going into the moral stuff of, well, the wars and stuff, and you could have some people saying, well, that's, if you look at it all and as an energetic expression, it's
Hmm.
like they're constantly needed different energies around to like change, and things are
I,
shifting, and that
yeah.
there constantly been wars, there've constantly been things, so it's very difficult for like a single person to work out. I think it's just like we have to kind of accept and be harmonious in relation to the world and do our bit. Like, we can't solve the war over wherever it is, but we can give to a local charity. We
Mm.
can perform functions that elevate our sense of self and ethics and things that don't even contribute to that really, but they have the similar effect, and they're growing our local community. And by having stronger communities, essentially that is going against the other stuff, isn't it? So we're doing
Mm.
our bit to boost the energy in this area. So
That's,
I think having that sense of agency is really key at a time like this, because you can shut off and be like, oh, apathetic, but we can
well, I was
do
just
that.
thinking then, like, that feeling of like just uh, trying to positively impact those closest to you rather than like worrying about world peace and stuff like that.
Mm,
And like, slightly strange way of looking at it perhaps, but like think of like COVID and you had the R number, the replacement value number, and was it when it gets over a certain amount, like I don't know. I'm thinking actually more to like birth rates, but 2.54 or something is like the replacement rate for people. So if you imagine like, okay, so if you can positively impact 2.5 people, then and they also positively impact people, then that will spread.
mm,
So like we hear about loving kindness and stuff through Buddhism,
mm.
and it can feel a bit like, what, really, like me saying hello to my neighbor, what's that going to do? But maybe we can quantify it. Maybe you only need to affect like 2-3 people for
Yeah,
it to have a real like beautiful change. But I don't know.
yeah, no,
Should I
totally,
get my guitar out?
yeah, yeah. Let's like the chimney, get the guitar out. I mean, to be honest, yeah, it's like we don't know what we do either. We have no idea what good we do or bad we do, because we're impacting all the time. We're just like, everything's an energy ripple. So it's like it's going out, and the same as that, it's coming back. But we kind of like, I guess you could see it as a bit of a quest. It's like, well, I'm this, and I've got this family, and I've got this, and if I can make that as the best place possible, I've done my job. If I can like make my mind harmonious as possible, I've done my job, because that will have a repercussion, positive repercussions, no matter what. And you could then also think about, depends on your belief of different lives and shit like that, but you know, you could say, well, next lifetime be even more evolved and evolved. And, you know, then that's the sense of enlightened mind that the Buddhists talk about, that one day the mind's enlightened, and at that stage you can impact masses of beings, and the whole world can change. But, you know, until that point, what can we do with who we think we are now? Just you tend to the weeds in your own garden, and that's enough. As well as having a bit more of a social activist approach, I think it's important to have a bit of both, because otherwise you can become too fixated with your own weeds. Because we can get on the self-development train in a total selfish way, because it's just about us. But the irony is, when you're helping others, the research shows that you're helping yourself more so than if you're just helping yourself. So by helping your neighbour and stuff like that, we're getting much more positive chemicals internally by letting go of the self and focusing on other. So it's really interesting, that, isn't it? It's that the barrier to all of it is often ourselves, and we spend most of our lives just focusing on ourselves. But, you know, the message is quite clear. Like, drop it, drop the illusion, awaken to the context, awaken out of context.
He said it. Clip it up. Clip it up. All right, I've got a few thoughts. So I'm thinking, achievement. So we're talking about achievement there, and probably one of the things that lingers. That one of the things that you get from achievement is status. So you trade in that achievement for some status. I mean, you know, look at our mutual friend Andy Allen, world records, you know, and I've spoke to him a lot about this and dopamine and how do you feel after, you know, doing that thing. And because afterwards it can feel a little bit like, and I'm sure you felt, you know, after you published your book, or when you had one of your kids, you know, there's that rush, and then afterwards you go, okay, now what? And it's like, I suppose if there was anything, and maybe not the kids example, that's maybe not a good example, but maybe it is. But like the one thing that kind of lingers a little bit is that sort of status. This person did this thing, therefore I see them as value to our community. Therefore, I want to be closer to that person. That, you know, I've certainly as well, like, it feels weird talking about it because when you name it, you kind of lose the game a little bit with status. But I felt the effects of that, I think, like over the last few years of since we improved myself, whether it be all these things that we've mentioned many times, High Rocks podcasting and stuff. You do start to see a little bit of a social return. But like, how can we view status with equanimity? There you go. That's that was the question.
All right, so I think like you touched upon the illusory nature of status from the external perspective. It's like, you know, because of we're taught about achievement, and you know, you're only kind of valuable to the world if you achieve, and or that could be a certain amount of money or cars or whatever, or a book or a record, whatever it is. Like, if you are placing your
Community leader,
if you're placing your intrinsic value onto the thing, when you get the thing, then you will inevitably experience the fall. of like, all right, well, what next? And oh, it didn't have the desired effect, or whatever. And so yeah, it becomes like this form of power. Like, but if you use that as power as well, it's like, well, that too is kind of feels a bit empty. So it's your intrinsic sense of value. If I am valued based upon how many books I sell, it will never be enough. But if actually I really value the content of what's in the page and I don't actually care about who reads it, then I've won. Otherwise, I'm kind of allowing the public to decide whether or not I've won or achieved or have status or power. So you're placing your value in someone else's or some other space, either external or internal. So if it's internally motivated and you're genuinely, like authentically from your own side doing or feel that sense of ease and achievement, then it's much more long lasting than if it's like, oh my God, I'm doing this and then I'll have 10,000 followers and oh my
Yeah.
God, then I can get 100 grand a year. And then, all these people want to be close to me and that, because that is so, well, A, it might not happen. So you're leading yourself up a blind alley, but B, it's absolutely not rewarding because it'll be empty in nature. Like you'll have the people who are not actually there for the real reasons too, because they're playing their own little ego games with it. So your friends, like your ego is friends with another friend's ego, but it's totally empty and worthless, really. It doesn't have any
So,
long lasting effect.
so like kind of what's happened here is I was talking about outputs, and now we're talking about inputs,
Yeah, yeah.
and focusing on the inputs rather than the outputs. So, yeah, like it. I suppose provided is what we're saying is like provided that the inputs are from a um like a positively fulfilled version of you, like wanting to do well in High Rocks because I enjoy it,
Yeah,
wanting to publish a book on equanimity because I'm interested in it, because Joe is interested in it,
yeah,
rather than going, I want to do this for the outcome.
yeah,
But then when the outcome, when the dividends that come along for the ride with the thing, you can just see them as bonuses rather than things that are that you need. For example, because you can't negate the dividends. For
yeah,
example, we would have never had a podcast had you not written the equanimity book,
yeah,
which meant maybe we would never have ended up being friends, which meant that, do you know what I mean? So that book has paid you status dividends, which meant we have ended up being friends,
yeah,
which is a beautiful thing. But
yeah.
it's nice as a byproduct rather than a prerequisite to the thing.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it all. Yeah, yeah. It's that's the
Yeah.
thing, isn't it? It's yeah, it's and of course when you do things from a place of tanglement, i.e., confusion, and you might have, oh, I want a book to help people, but really it was only to help yourself, uh,
Mm.
because it was so messy, you know. But then you've reached a different place, and you're like, oh, now my output is from a better place, but I can still see the value in what that other thing has had. So it's not like, do things, keep producing and doing things, I think is the message. You don't know when the authenticity will arrive, and or it could be a process for you to reach that authenticity, because maybe like you needed to go to that, you needed to feel the empty hollow nature of um, not getting status in order to grow and develop to now not give a shit about getting people to read, you know, in order for your next output to be more powerful. That's one theory, right? That
Mm.
could happen. So, like, who's to say what you do is right or wrong? Again, it's like there's no such thing. It's like you do what you do, and you'll reach wisdom. Your own inner wisdom will be created as a byproduct of whatever you output into the world. And it will be through this whole concept of, because a lot of people do things for praise, and it might be parental praise. We dress it up in different ways, or peer praise, and we're just desperate for that validation. But it might be dressed up as, oh, I'm not actually after the validation. It's all for me. But really, we don't really feel that deep down. And actually, it hurts like mad when we don't get the praise. But then through that pain, we don't care about the praise. So I've said that I think twice now, but it's, you know what I mean? It's like, I think the check your motivation on your goal and check how rewarded you feel from others versus your own sense of self. I wrote that thing recently, I think, touching upon this, about ambiguous ambition, and it's now like, I think I'm a completely different person from when I wrote the first book. And it's like, I don't actually have that sense of care anymore about who reads it. I genuinely don't. Whereas before I really did. It was like, I need the world to read this in order to recognize for it to change. It's quite a linear approach to like what I thought would happen. And it's been the complete opposite, which is amazing, really, because I think it's led down this place of deep satisfaction, which is peace. Because otherwise you're always falling victim to praise and blame. Praise and blame, people will hate on you, they'll find fault in you, or they'll praise you, and you'll become addicted to that unconsciously. It's like, oh, I'll do this now, see how many likes I get, or whatever. I do this now, see who notices. Like, it's all around other people. But it goes back to that idea of people actually genuinely really thinking about you long enough on purpose to actually care. They don't really. They're so wrapped up in their own world and their own problems and their own concepts of praise and blame and stuff that you might get a fleeting little thing that they've crossed paths with you, but they don't really care. Like, we have to really find value in our sense of self and do things for our hearts. And the byproduct, if it's genuine, might appear. It might not. Either outcome's fine. Otherwise, you're being like, oh, I'm just doing this because good things are coming to me. And it's still this kind of subtly the wrong way of doing it, because it's like you've got this expectation, and expectation's huge in all of this. It's like, there's expectation in everything we do. So if you can get rid of that too, and just write, or just high rock, or just podcast with no expectation, and the byproduct comes, and there might be no listeners, but you're just as happy to the no listeners or the 100,000 listeners, and you have, my friend, are wise. Otherwise, you're just like, oh God, 100 grand, I need, only 10,000, only 5 have listened, oh, no one's listening, I'm going to stop. And it's like, we've got to somehow find peace with our action.
Yeah. I've felt this a little bit recently, where I started doing quite a lot of High Rocks episodes, because I was interested in it. And then I noticed recently I had like my most listened to month ever. And a lot of that have been tapping into this High Rocks niche.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the business model, isn't it? Go niche down because people want to put you into little boxes. That's the High Rocks person. That's the Equanimity guy. That's the attachment person, whatever. And then I found myself like, it ends up being like that was really nice, but then that ends up being like the fucking chains, like a slave. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, so now I'm like, I want to chat to Joey about like fucking equanimity, and like, and part of me is going, what about the High Rocks people? They're listening. They might be like, what the fuck's this?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm like, hold on a minute. I'm being captured there by my audience.
Yeah.
And it's like, but then I've got this contradiction of, well, but also I need listeners to be able to gain sponsors, to be able to create more episodes, to be able to do more on the podcast. But life is messy. We need to hold these two things together, don't we?
Yeah. Being comfortable with that contradiction, and the nuances of like of difference. You can be comfortable with, I'm not satisfying the High Rocks people with this. I'm doing this because I'm interested in it. Somewhere in the middle is where it'll be. I might lose
It's like,
certain listeners. I might gain others in other areas. Either way, if I'm happy at doing this and I think it can make a contribution to just one person, it's worth it. And even if that's one person is either you or me, it's worth it.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it does take a lot because it sounds like so hippie and cliche, and it's like, oh yeah, really, guys, come on. But it is a different way of thinking, and I think
And I
it
think it's
takes
that's
pain to get there.
also, if you're trying to do a creative pursuit as well,
Yeah,
the only way for your true being to like shine through into your work is to be doing it from like heart led like motivation, because I'm interested in High Rocks, rather than like, oh, this will get me more viewers.
yeah,
And this is exactly, we've gone back full circle, haven't we, to the motivation thing and the byproduct.
yeah.
I'll start to wrap things up now. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions before we finish up. If I gave you 60 seconds, or you can have 3 minutes if you want. If I gave you 60 seconds to deliver a message to someone who is feeling unfulfilled in their life, what would you say?
I would say a lot of all the things that you think will fulfill you come from a place of you first, like loving and accepting yourself as who you are. And the things that you think you're unfulfilled from are like, although they might be externalized, like lacking a job or lacking a partner or lacking whatever, are coming from a sense of lack within, around an area of yourself that has not necessarily like been accepted or healed or nurtured in some capacity. So try and embrace the spirit of self-compassion, but start moving and get physically active, in terms of, and also try different things to work on what you think brings you joy, like skills or hobbies. The joy needs to come as a form of self-kindness in order for you to embrace the other aspects of yourself that are not necessarily fulfilled, but also recognize that every single person in the entire planet is experiencing what you're experiencing, and you're absolutely not alone. There's 8 million of us, and we all feel the same, and that is part of the human condition, and we can accept and love that. And from this space, we can then find joy, curiosity, equanimity, compassion for others, and all of that other stuff. The byproducts come from this acceptance of who you think you are. But it may well be that you need to do some healing or disentangling from your past experiences to release yourself so you can start to grow. If that makes sense. It's just like just a bit of a, yeah, I think I'd say something like that.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Who was I talking to then? Was I talking to my inner child? Or the world?
You definitely were.
And I think it's like, yeah, it's a bloody, the human condition's so fascinating, isn't it? I love us. I love us because we always trying to improve and better. But maybe as we are right now, we're perfect. But like, if you're just you don't see yourself because there's other stuff in the way. So you're releasing the kind of getting rid of the stains, and there you are, perfect. But at the moment, you're viewing through the lens of clouded vision of this is wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, and it's about really getting rid of all that to recognize your unique, innate, intrinsic value and worth. It's always been there. It's always shining there. But, we've somehow dimmed our light from people or past experiences or our own self-centeredness, and it's been dim. But it's just a case of turning it back on. So it's not really like accumulating more things and getting stuff, but just releasing what is in the way,
Have you seen that film Flow?
No.
Okay, I'd recommend it.
Okay. Flow.
It's like an anime film of like this little cat.
Yeah.
And it gets caught in like a global cataclysm flood type event.
Oh, is it about jazz and stuff?
About what?
Jazz.
Jazz?
Yeah.
No, you're thinking of that's a beautiful film as well. You're thinking of Soul.
Yeah, I am actually. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful film. But I started watching it last night, and I'm always a bit like, I'm never sure about like animated films, and of course, and this is without any dialogue. So I'm like, how can I find any meaning or purpose? How can I find any meaning from an animated film with no dialogue? Turns out quite a lot. Like, turns out, how can I explain it? It was very, like, it felt like a very spiritual endeavor watching it, because we talk about, like, are we enough as we are, and who is at the center, who is Jason, who is Joey, and then if you like take away clothes, take away hair, take away mustache, take away speech even, and this last night, because there's no speech, and it's animals, I don't know, it's made me think of it, and it's like you're just so present with like the interactions rather than focusing on the actual dialogue or whatever. I don't know. I just found it quite an interesting experience watching it. But yeah,
it sounds wonderful. I'll definitely pay attention to that. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
Have we done the reflection question before?
Which one?
Okay, so what's one question or reflection you need to ask yourself at the beginning of the day, at the beginning of each day, right now?
Right now in my life, what's one reflection?
What do you want to hear? What do you need to hear? If you had a therapist that would, before you went out the door in the morning, you can have like 3 minutes, or what would he or she say to you? What would you have her say? They. I keep saying her because my therapist was a woman.
I would like to wake up in the morning. I'd be like, listen, you've woken up, your habits and your neural pathways that lean into existential gloom around life and death and purpose and meaning are just normal. Let them just be. You're wonderful. You're doing incredible stuff. You're an amazing father, and you're amazing at your job. And the little guy inside of you will be really proud. And keep going and try to impact one other person today, so they feel a bit more worthy in whatever it is, whatever avenue or capacity they may think that they're struggling in. And yeah, be curious, happy, bold, don't be lazy, eat healthy, be conscious of the calories and your nutritional intake, try and get some exercise in, and love and be grateful for every single minute that arises in the day, because you don't know when it's going to pass. And shout out to all the people that you know that you love, and be grateful to them and for this planet for sustaining you. The oxygen that you're breathing, the trees that are giving the oxygen, the clouds that are creating the rain, that are creating the trees that are giving the oxygen, and all the food you intake, and start thinking about all the different things that exist that support and nourish you as a being. And so you never feel lonely, because you're completely and utterly connected with everything and everyone on the planet. And so just live in that buoyant, joyful, equanimous space of like here and now, wonderful, so happy to be alive. Say something like that. And also,
That was lovely. I know it's to you, but yeah, it was lovely and an interesting like lens into where your head's at the moment.
I think it's like it's really seeing the independent nature of everything that comes together, and that we
Mm.
can't really experience things without on its own. It's always linked to something else, like which is quite miraculous. Like there's nothing that exists by itself, basically, and that it's
Mm-hmm.
like we're kind of in this massive thing that is dependent on each other. So I'm exist in relation to everything else. So you be so grateful for everything else. For like, I'm able to do this with my hands right now is a complete and utter miracle, to be honest. And
Yeah.
and it's wonderful. And nature, like, it's phenomenal, to be honest. The fact that we can only breathe through plants, and the fact they're just around us, and grass, and there's water and waterfalls, and and it's blue sky. The moment, because it's May and it's like gorgeous sky, I'm like in awe at the like vibrancy of the blueness, and it's a kind
Mm.
of like, and just like, what the hell is this place? It's bloody amazing, really, if you look at it like that.
Yeah.
And just appreciative of like the laptop. We're connecting via technology that's been created by loads of factory workers in a different country that have each been doing their part diligently and logistically in a factory, and the couriers that have shipped the parts over, the makers, the shops that have advertised, the money that's gone into it from you know my work to buy the laptop for it to be here on this chair that's equally had that amount of beings involved in it.
Mm.
So like it's just like everywhere you look is just like so many hundreds of people and things have happened for this moment right now, me and you, to be talking. Like,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it's like I often say like when someone's going through like or feeling a little bit down on themselves about like health or fitness or whatever. I said to someone the other day, I was like, you come from an unbroken lineage of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and DNA to be
wow,
this
yeah,
like perfect being,
yeah,
organism. You're like perfectly adapted for, well, okay, maybe not this environment, but like, your body is amazing. And then, and when you're saying that, it's almost like you could say the same about technology, like in parallel to that, technology is this unbroken line of knowledge passed along.
mm,
Like, can you imagine like being the first? Imagine being like dropped into like on Mars or Earth with no technology and go, all right, make a pen. Where would you start? Like, just to make a pen.
I know, it's phenomenal, isn't it?
Like, it is wild.
Wild, because
And like I said to my granddad the other day, because like he's a little bit down and out about like the times we're living in, AI and stuff like that. And I was like I know it seems like I know it's not great, and we've lost a lot of community and stuff. But I was like, don't you think it's like miraculous and wild to think that you were alive during World War II, the greatest disaster that's ever encountered our species, and to be now alive the bit where like artificial intelligence is becoming a thing, like huge moments in the history of humanity. And also, like, I'm like, do you not think like that people thought the world was falling apart back in World War II?
Exactly. Yeah.
I would think probably I would take these times over that. As much as we like nostalgic about World War II, aren't we? There was more community and maybe a little bit more meaning and stuff. You were more location centered because we didn't have the access, all the internet and all these other things going on. But yeah,
Yeah.
bit of a rant there, but
there's good and bad in everything, isn't there? And
yeah.
the good of the technology, if it's used correctly, is pretty phenomenal. The fact you can connect with people who might be doing their own thing in their own gym, listening, and it's like that's insane. Like, and you can start to see like there's maybe like a reason or like a karmic ripening to everything as well. It's like everything has its ripple effect and exists in relation to everything else. So it's like we're experiencing now stuff that we've created like in the past.
Yeah.
Like when we're now experiencing it now, and then we're creating like the future, etc. So the best metric of like if you want to be happy in the future is to be happy now and peaceful now. Because if you're peaceful now, then you've got the other stuff. But if you like think, oh, I'm lacking now, but in the future I'll get something, you'll always end up in that space. So you just have to find it right here, right now, and your future's sorted.
Mate, thank you. This has been cool. Do you want to plug away? Tell us where people can find you and where they can spend money on your retirement.
I don't want them to. Basically, I used to be this. Oh, let's plug, but it doesn't work. And also, it's people in like, oh, here we go, the sales pitch. So I'm like, please don't buy anything, don't read anything, leave me alone.
Don't buy the book available on.
I've totally let go of anyone buying that thing. I think people do buy it online and that, but yeah, there is
the links are all in there. We'll all be in there because, yeah. Hey, we should. We'll go off air in a minute, but we'll talk about it. But I think we should definitely do the two things. We need to go on Towers again, and we need to do the retreats. But let's. We'll have a private chat about that. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Jason.
Lovely to chat as always. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon, mate.
All right, mate. Yeah, thanks a lot for your time. Cheers. Bye.
Hey guys, it's me. Just a quick one before you get going. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to my guest and that 15% off you can get from Bear Bar. Go to bit.ly/BearJace for 15% off your first order. Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.